Now, let's begin the story by going to look at the historical Chief Justices. They'll put that on the screen. I'll go through it very quickly, and then we build it up to right now. And then, but for as part of the history, what you need to know is that President Akufo-Addo is the only president in the history of Ghana who would be nominating not two, but three Chief Justices to lead the judiciary in Ghana. He's already nominated Justice Sophia Kufu. He nominated Justice Eni Yeboah, and now, 2 weeks from now, he's nominating another Chief Justice. Let's go back to the history of Ghana's Chief Justices. So before we're independent, our Chief Justice was a British man sitting in the Privy Council called Lord something. And he was Chief Justice over the territories of Her Majesty and all that. So that was, we don't add that because that's pre-independence. Now, after independence, the very distinguished man from Adom-Otchere, Sir Akukosa, the pride of Adom-Otchere, he became our Lord Chief Justice. And in 1960, it was his duty to swear in Osajefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah as the first president of the Republic of Ghana. Sir Akukosa himself got sacked by Kwame Nkrumah. He was fired after the Terry Adom-Otchere trial. What's Terry Adom-Otchere trial? There was a treason trial. Some bomb had occasioned in Kolungungu, and Dr. Nkrumah was threatened by that bomb. Some people tried to kill him, and so some people were arrested, and there was a trial. Part of those who were arrested about this trial included the Interior Minister. Nia Akwaje, whom you know, one of the big six, Akwaje, was the Interior Minister at the time. Dr. Nkrumah arrested him. It was believed that Terry Adom-Otchere, who was also a minister in the government, Saki Skek and others were part of this trial. So they went to court, and in the panel that discharged them and cleared them of treason, included Sir Akufo-Addo and others, and Dr. Nkrumah got offended. He got very angry about the decision of the judges, and so Sir Akukosa was sacked. All right. In his place came Julius Sarkodie-Addo, who came in 1963. The Terry Adom-Otchere trial was about 1962. In 1963, Justice Julius Sarkodie-Addo became the next Chief Justice of Ghana. He was there until the coup that overthrew Dr. Nkrumah in 1966. So in 66, a coup occurred and Nkrumah was overthrown. Nkrumah was overthrown in 66, and guess who? The father of our president, Edward Akufo-Addo, became the Chief Justice in 1966 when the coup occurred. They removed Sarkodie, and they had Edward Akufo-Addo as the Lord Chief Justice. In fact, Akufo-Addo was already a Supreme Court judge, and you know that Akufo-Addo had been an in-law to Dr. Dankwa, so he was part of the United Party's thinking and philosophy. He had been close to Buzia and others. A gentleman from a Kropon, you have to remember that. He's not from Chebi, he's from a Kropon. His son is from Chebi because his son's mother is from Chebi. So president is from Chebi because I can't say matrilineal. But this is an Ekropon this year. If I say he's from Chebi, tomorrow I have to answer to the Ekwapem Hine. This is a this year of Ekropon. Edward Akufo-Addo, Chief Justice, 66 to 70. All right. We don't have his photograph, but Edmond Alexander Lankwe Bannerman was a Chief Justice from 1970 to 1972. Then we have Mr. Justice Samuel Azu-Krab, who became Chief Justice from 1973 to 1977. And then we have Mr. Fred Apaloo, about whom there's a lot of drama, if I have time I can say, because there's a lot of legal drama about Justice Apaloo becoming Chief Justice. You have to remember that Justice Apaloo is very close friends with the Akufo-Addo family and his mentor and the head of chambers. So Apaloo worked in the Akufo-Addo's chambers, Apaloo, Victor Usu, and others. They worked in Akufo-Addo's chambers in the early 60s. So their boss was Chief Justice in 1966 to 1966 to 1970. Then in 1977, Frederick Apaloo took the position of his former Master of Chambers, Edward Akufo-Addo, and he became the Lord Chief Justice. However, there was significant drama, you know. In 1979, elections occurred, and the CPP won the elections. Apaloo is UP. You have to understand that he's friends with Akufo-Addo and Dankwa and all that. So he's UP, and he's sitting Chief Justice. Okay. So when the coup occurs, there's what we call the transitional provisions. The transitional provisions continue in office. Some of these people, IGP, CDS, Chief Justice, and all that. The transitional provisions continues them in office so that you don't have to pull down the whole system when you are coming back to constitution after a coup d'etat. So the new president, when he comes, will decide whether he wants to continue with you as Chief Justice, continue with you as IGP, and all of that. So that was the conundrum in which Justice Apaloo and the government found themselves in 1970. So like an NDC government wins the election and the Chief Justice is MPP, something like that. So what did they do? Very clever men. What did they do? They decided to nominate Justice Apaloo for the job. He is already Chief Justice, but now a constitution has come. So you have to nominate him for the job, because under the coup time, there's no Supreme Court. The court system ends at the Court of Appeal, but there's a Chief Justice, which was him. Now you're going to have a Supreme Court. So they're going to nominate people to the Supreme Court, appoint them, and then the Chief Justice will come out of the Supreme Court. So the government nominated people for the Supreme Court, including Fred Apaloo. Very interesting, okay. Knowing that they don't like Apaloo, everybody was confused in Ghana. All right. So Fred Apaloo appears before the Parliament's Appointments Committee and tells the Appointments Committee that I don't have to be here because I am Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana. I have not been removed as Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana. The President cannot purport to renominate me as Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana because I am Chief Justice. Because the transitional provisions continues me as Chief Justice. It says anybody in the office of Chief Justice shall be deemed to have been appointed under this constitution. That's what the transitional provision said. Anyone who is ex, including Chief Justice, shall be deemed to have been appointed under the Constitution. So Apaloo went to Parliament, to the vetting committee, and made that case that I don't have to be here because I'm Chief Justice. Well, the Appointment Committee chairman said, very well, Mr. Chief Justice, but the President has nominated you. Our job is to vet you and report back to the President. So decide what you want to do. Just Apaloo, on the consultation of people like Nana Akufo-Addo and others, Chachukikata and others, decided to participate in the vetting. He did. Then, after the vetting, it was reported that Parliament's Appointment Committee had failed Justice Apaloo at the vetting, so he wasn't nominated. That was a trick of the CPP. Fantastic trick. It didn't work. Apaloo then called his boys as I put it, Nana Akufo-Addo, the leader. He said, Chief, come. You guys should go to court and file. Nana Akufo-Addo says, I'll do it with your nephew, Chachukikata. No problem. So, Chachukikata is brought on board. So, the case then, Nana Akufo-Addo then picks his friend, Dr. Kwame Amakotofo, who was teaching at KNUST in Kumasi. His nickname was Ojampa because he has an Ojampa hotel almost near KNUST. He sends his friend down from Kumasi and said, Amakotofo, come and file this thing. I'm the lawyer. I'm working with Chachu on this matter. So, that's why the case is called Tofo versus the Attorney General. It is Amakotofo who filed the case. So the case that went before the Supreme Court at that time was for the court to determine the effect of the transitional provisions, whether Justice Apaloo, having been a Chief Justice already and now nominated by the President, whether the transitional provisions that says that he should operate as if he was appointed under the Constitution makes it ineligible for Apaloo to appear before Parliament's Appointments Committee. The court, including Justice Kwabena Japon's father, held by a 3-2 majority that Apaloo was right, Akufo-Addo was right, Chachukikata was right. Famous case of Tofo as the Attorney General. Pandemonium in the CPP government. Attorney General Joe Randolph has to go and explain to President Liman how he has lost this case so that Apaloo, who has failed vetting as Chief Justice, will have to remain as Chief Justice. That was the matter. Very, very interesting matter. The Supreme Court held that Apaloo was the substantial Chief Justice. Nothing can change it. So, the CPP government had to proceed with an MPP Chief Justice. That's what happened in 1979. That's the story of Fred Apaloo. It's a story that has Nana Akufo-Addo in it, it has Chachukikata in it, it has President Liman in it, it has Joe Randolph in it. Very, very interesting. It has Justice Kwabena Japon's father, also in it. Very interesting, rich with history, isn't it? Fred Apaloo was Chief Justice in 1977 to 1986. Particularly distinguished lawyer, we have been told. We didn't come to meet him, but all the senior lawyers. If you spoke to Peter Adjeti for 10 minutes and he doesn't mention Fred Apaloo, then you are not talking to Peter Adjeti. They eulogize him so much that we thought that he was a god, but he's not. He's a great lawyer and a good Chief Justice. Fred Apaloo, may he rest in eternal peace. So after Apaloo came E.N.P. Sowa. So the coup then occurred. The Rawlings coup came in 81. They kept Apaloo over there because now you have to understand the connection. The coup came in 81. They kept Apaloo there. Why? Because Kojochi Kata was the National Security Coordinator. He is Apaloo's nephew. He and Chachu both are Apaloo's nephews. It's the reason why Chachu was with Akufo-Addo to defend Apaloo in this matter. So as they came to power through the coup, you can understand Fred Apaloo will remain there because Kojochi Kata was Director of National Security. Fred Apaloo remained Chief Justice until 1986 when E.M.P. Sowa was appointed by the government of Flight Lieutenant Rawlings. And that ended in 1990 and brought in Mr. Philip Edward Archer, who most of my generation remember as the Obroni Chief Justice, as we used to call him. He has a lot of white hair. If I have some of the videos of the Rawlings inauguration, you will see Chief Justice Philip Archer. That was 1991 to 1995. And then came Mr. Justice Aban, who was appointed, and then in 2001, Aban exited, may he rest in peace, and came Justice Edward Redu. Kwame Redu became the Lord CJ. I met him personally. I knew him. I spoke to him many times. Very, very decent man, very intelligent man. Edward Redu was Chief Justice in 2000 to 2003. And then Mr. George Kingsley Aqua, I know him very well as well. We spoke many times. Very intelligent, sharp brain. George Kingsley Aqua was Chief Justice in 2003 to 2007. And then came the First Lady Chief Justice, Georgina Theodora Wood, of whom I knew well as well, in whom we are well pleased. Georgina Wood was one of the judges of our moot court when we were in law faculty and law school. That's how I met her. I had participated in the moot court. She had been excited about my advocacy, and she had called me after. Then we had spoken, and she said she was a former police officer, and her name is Georgina Wood. At that time, she was on the Court of Appeal. Later on, I was very delighted to see that she had become the Lord Chief Justice. Georgina Theodora Wood. Then, Sophia Abena Boafo Akufu, who is quite well known for her commentary about how young women should not submit themselves to older men for what? iPhone. You remember that? Sophia Akufu is well known for admonishing young women not to submit themselves to much older men just for iPhone. Okay. All right, so that's Justice Sophia Abena Akufu. Recently also, remember her for being very unhappy with the government debt exchange program and for picketing at the Ministry of Finance and indicating her single-mindedness, etc., etc. Sophia Akufu became the Chief Justice after that. Then, now, we have Mr. Justice Eni Yeboah. 2019 till present, Justice Eni Yeboah served his time well. He's about to leave in 2 weeks from now. Justice Eni Yeboah will be out of here. Okay. So, we are done with the history.